cresci no interior de Minas Gerais, numa cidadezinha chamada São José do Buriti. É uma cidade muito pequena.
Eu sou de Fortaleza, nascido e criado em Fortaleza. Estudava numa escola de bairro, depois mudei para uma escola maior.
E eu tinha sonhos de estudar, muito porque minha mãe não tinha tido oportunidade de estudar. E ela sempre me incentivou muito.
Eu sempre estudei em escolas públicas, né? Eu venho de uma família de baixa renda. Ao longo do meu ensino médio, eu cursei ensino técnico em administração, integrado ao médio, numa ETEC do interior de São Paulo.
E eu entrei no site, eu vi que tinha um programa de bolsas. Eu me apaixonei pela escola, me apaixonei pela visão da escola. E eu vi que eu me enquadrava no perfil.
Por acaso, eu acabei conhecendo o Insper, acabei entrando no site do Insper, fiquei completamente apaixonada pelo curso de engenharia que tinha aquela proposta hands-on, aquela proposta mão na massa, uma proposta completamente disruptiva para um curso de engenharia no Brasil, e eu resolvi prestar o programa de bolsas.
Eu descobri o Insper, cara, eu já estava fazendo faculdade lá em Fortaleza, descobri que existia a faculdade, o Insper, descobri o programa de bolsas. Me inscrevi, passei e vim.
No dia que saiu a resposta da bolsa, né, eu tava ansiosa, esperando, falei, meu Deus, o que vai acontecer? Liguei pra minha mãe e falei, mãe, passei, já sei qual faculdade que eu quero ir, agora não preciso escolher mais, porque eu tenho certeza que é o Insper.
Eu nunca senti algo antes como aquilo. Pra mim era a concretização de todos os sonhos que aquela menina tinha. E naquele momento, eu não sabia que a minha vida ia mudar tanto.
Primeiro, a primeira coisa, se não existisse bolsa, não existia nessa no Insper, entendeu? Não tem como, não fazia, estava muito longe da nossa realidade, então acho que poder entrar numa universidade da qualidade do Insper só foi possível para mim pela bolsa.
O grande objetivo do programa de bolsas, né, do ponto de vista institucional, era trazer diversidade para o corpo docente. Na verdade, criar um corpo docente, construir um corpo docente diverso, de ideias, de propósitos, de visão de mundo.
O que eu acho que é uma das grandes qualidades da população brasileira, que é a capacidade de lidar com a diversidade. E todos nós sabemos a quantidade de talentos que estão por aí mundo afora e que obviamente não têm oportunidade. Aliás, esse é um dos problemas do Brasil, tolerância e oportunidade.
É uma realidade mesmo que a depender do CEP onde você nasce vai destinar seu futuro. Isso é inadmissível.
Todas as pessoas que nascem no Brasil têm que ter as mesmas oportunidades para realizar seus sonhos. Não importa se elas nascem na periferia de São Paulo, na zona rural no Nordeste, em bairros ricos, todos têm que ter a mesma oportunidade.
A gente começou a colocar esforços onde estão esses talentos acadêmicos, porque a questão financeira, a escola estava preparada para suprir, e a parte deles era trazer o gosto pelo estudo, a curiosidade intelectual, acreditar na educação como meio de geração de possibilidades para eles na vida, e a gente teve o desafio então de investigar e procurar esse pessoal. Até no Ceará a gente foi parar, né?
O mundo ele é muito maior do que essas 8 quadras que cercam a faculdade, e trazer gente de fora, você traz, cara, perspectivas diferentes de problemas, você traz novos problemas para dentro da faculdade. Eu acho que tem um ganho de ter diversidade dentro do corpo de alunos, que é super importante para a formação, tanto como profissionais, mas para a formação cidadã também, que eu acho que a faculdade faz parte disso.
A história do Insper é uma trajetória, as coisas vão acontecendo, é um processo. Então nós temos vários marcos. Um marco importante foi a criação das nossas bolsas não restituíveis integrais. Outro marco aí foi mais gradual, é o engajamento progressivo dos nossos ex-alunos, chamados alumni, no nosso fundo de bolsa. Nós temos um número crescente de alumni que hoje contribuem para o Fundo de Bolsas, o que nos deixa extremamente felizes e orgulhosos. Outro marco importante foi a Toca da Raposa, que foi o primeiro dormitório que nós tivemos aqui no Insper, voltado para os bolsistas integrais.
Para pessoas como eu, que são de fora de São Paulo, existe a Toca da Raposa, né, que é um residencial incrível que foi construído pelo Insper para abrigar esses talentos do país inteiro e conseguir viabilizar que essas pessoas estudem no Insper. Então, é um espaço bastante colaborativo que me possibilita me dedicar integralmente aos estudos no Insper.
O programa de bolsa permite que essas pessoas, que esses jovens, consigam atingir seus sonhos, cursar os cursos de interesse numa instituição de excelência. E isso vai refletir em toda a vida desses jovens. Do lado da instituição é muito importante porque esses alunos trazem um dinamismo grande para a escola.
O Insper também é um sonho de quem acredita no Brasil, né? Eu acho que aí todo mundo sai um pouco imbuído dessa vontade de fazer diferença, levando esse senso de pertencimento, esse olhar pragmático para onde a gente vai depois de sair aqui do 4A300.
Insper, na verdade, vem de inspirar e pertencer. Então, esse pertencer que nós queremos realmente colocar os nossos alunos, que eles pertencem à nossa comunidade. Eles, na realidade, estão ligados à escola perenemente.
Então, a gente colocou muita energia em criar esse senso de comunidade, de engajamento, de amor à camisa, porque independentemente de qualquer contrato, é em outro lugar que está esse compromisso.
Meu sonho também é poder adotar alguém como mentora, como madrinha para o programa de bolsas e poder devolver ao Insper tudo que eu recebi.
E eu posso acompanhar hoje como doador, como parceiro do Insper, iniciativas, né? Ter essa troca e poder ajudar pessoas que vêm de uma realidade parecida com a minha, acho que isso para mim é muito legal.
É um grande desafio e nós estamos aqui no Insper dentro do nosso microcosmo, que é ensino superior, dentro daquilo que nós achamos que podemos fazer bem e adicionar valor, procurando fazer o melhor para contribuir para esse fim.
E eu espero que o programa de bolsas esteja apenas começando, porque é claro que todos nós aqui temos um limite, mas ele de fato cria, enfim, impactos mais que proporcionais.
É muito bom pensar no futuro do programa, né? Daquilo que a gente colhendo os benefícios do que evoluiu até aqui e o que a gente espera, o que a gente sonha para frente.
Eu acho que hoje trabalhar com a educação é pensar que a oportunidade não pode ser só para alguns, não pode ser para o aluno que já está engajado, tem que ser para engajar um aluno também.
Tem que pensar grande, tem que sonhar. Quanto mais jovens a gente forma, né? Quanto maior a oferta, né, de um programa desse para esses jovens, maior o impacto potencial para o nosso país.
Bom dia, meu nome é Irineu Gianesi, eu vou conduzir essa discussão hoje. Estou começando em português, embora nós tenhamos uma ilustre convidada britânica que vai estar conosco aqui, e em segundos eu vou mudar para o inglês. Gostaria de dar as boas-vindas para os nossos alunos de graduação que estão começando conosco nesse semestre e também para outras pessoas que estão se juntando a nós para esse webinar. So, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and facilitate this conversation. I will introduce my distinguished guests. Here with us we have Guilherme Fowler. Guilherme Fowler is an associate professor at Insper, and he is conducting teaching and research in the areas of entrepreneurship, governance, and organizational strategy. By the way, Guilherme has been in the chair of Endeavor Chair of Entrepreneurship and has really advanced that topic in research at Insper in the recent years. And I'd like to introduce also to you our distinguished guest this morning, Nneka Abulokwe. Nneka, OBE, and I'll just in a minute I'll ask her to explain to us what that means, because it's very unique from the United Kingdom. She's the CEO and founder of Micromax Consulting, a boutique tech and governance consulting firm. She's a known executive director at the University of Cambridge and Davis Group, among others. And Nneka has had a successful corporate career and is the first Black female professional to sit at a board level of a multinational tech company in the UK. And based on her work and current activities, she's the first, but will not be the only one and will not be the last. Right, Nneka?
Indeed.
So in 2019, she was conferred with the honor of Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for her services to business in the Queen's Birthday Honours List. Nneka earned her doctorate in business administration from the Cranfield University School of Management in the UK. And I knew Nneka in that period because we were colleagues at the DBA, the Doctor of Business Administration in Cranfield. And I have the luck to not only be in the same cohort, but also we did a series of intermediary works and projects together. And one thing that I remember is that during one of the periods that we were there, Nneka also showed us her skills on dance, and he offered a dance class to the cohort. So it was really remarkable. It has nothing to do with the discussion today, but it gives you a sense of the kind of person that we have with us today, a very eclectic one. So she has recently been recognized in Diligence 2020 Modern Governance 100 for her exceptional ability to support organizations throughout the coronavirus pandemic, driving greater diversity and sustainable cybersecurity practices, providing sharper insights for company leadership, and ensuring strong governance practices across the board. Among her other professional accolades are being a finalist in Governance Professional of the Year 2018, appearing in 2019, 2020, and 2021 Power List 100 of most influential Black business leaders, and being the top-ranked technology professional, and in the 2019, 2018, 2019, 2020 EM Power Ethic Minority Executives and Role Models list. Nneka is also a fellow of both the Chartered Institute for IT, BCS, and the Chartered Institute for Project Management, and a Freeman of the Technology Livery Company. So, Nneka, I'm very, very happy to have you here with us. And I'd like to start by passing the word to you so you can talk a little bit about your career, so our audience can get to know you a little better.
Thank you so much, Irineu. I would like to thank yourself, Irineu, my good friend and fellow researcher and cohort member from Cranfield. And also, Fowler, I would also like to say it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure to share this virtual stage with you. And also to everyone who is there virtually, I would like to say a hearty welcome, and I'll be walking you through my journey. I am totally humbled by the introduction that Irineu has given me. It is something that I hold with a lot of pride, with a lot of personal as well as professional pride. And it has been quite an interesting journey. I'm looking forward to sharing my journey with you today. My journey, and sometimes, we look at somebody and you see what the person, just as what Irineu has read out to you, what the person has achieved, but of equal importance is also what has gone before that, right to my formative years, to my background, my family, where I've come from, the conditionings I've had. And also, I was thinking about it the other day. I said, if I was to say something to my younger self, what sort of things would I say to my younger self? And I'll come on to that as we go through this conversation. So thank you very much, Fowler. Thank you very much, Irineu. My name is Nneka Abulokwe, and everybody, the first thing anybody asks me is, how do you pronounce your name? Because it has two consonants, and people say, is it Nneka, Nika, Nneka? People don't want to cause offense. And they always ask that question. It's always something I wait for, okay? And it's quite interesting. And really, it's part of this conversation we're having today, because we live in a very diverse world. People don't want to cause offense. People don't want to come off initially on the wrong side of things. They want to be able to greet you well. But also, for me, I know well that I have an unusual name. So for me, it's being a lot more accepting of everybody and knowing that people will pronounce it differently from different parts of the world. Because even in India, it's spelled slightly different, but it's the same pronunciation. But people don't. So in the different parts of the world, you may have the same name, but with a different sort of spelling and things like that. So it's completely fine. That name again comes from West Africa. So I am of mixed origin. My father is from Nigeria in West Africa, the eastern part of Nigeria. The name Nneka means mother is great. My mother comes from the Caribbean, so she is of Jamaican origins. And my parents met as students in the UK in the 50s. My mother was sent by the Jamaican government to the UK to study. And my father was also sent by the Nigerian government to the UK to study. And this was all part of the colonial period when they were handing over power to the different countries, and they needed to train indigents of those countries to then take on power. So they sent the brightest, and my father just happened to be one of the brightest in Nigeria, and my mother also happened to be one of the brightest in Jamaica. And they came to the UK. They came to the UK at a time where there were very few Black people in the UK. So it was quite strange to them. And my father was in the London School of Economics and Political Science. It's called the LSE, University of London. And I remember my father was telling us all these stories of how, he was probably one or two of the only Black ones across, his year group, and how those his year mates really looked after him, because they saw the value he brought. He was very bright. And, he has very fond memories of his time in the UK. But what happens is that with those sort of scholarships, when you finish, you go back to your country and then you take on power. It's all part of that governance process whereby they send you to the best schools. So like the people who were doing accounting and politics and all of that went to LSE. Those who were doing dentistry went to UCL, so the best schools. And that was the foundation for the independence. Anyway, so that was in the 50s. I was born, so I have 5 elder ones. I was born a lot later. I mean, I'm the last of 6. And my parents went back to the UK. I was born back to Nigeria. I was born in the UK, but I spent all my formative years growing up in Nigeria. So what has that done for me? You see, I come from a country, or I was brought up in a country as a citizen that was used to seeing people that looked like me in positions of power. My parents were seasoned professionals who were highly educated. They had gone back to Nigeria, got good jobs in the civil service. My mother started teaching, and then they brought up this family unit, okay? Now, the mere fact that my mother was from Jamaica and my father was from Nigeria already brought that dynamism and that multiculturalism into our mix. Also, because they were highly educated, there was a lot of emphasis on education. And in a country like Nigeria, there is a high amount of emphasis on education. Now, I said before I was the last of 6. I wasn't necessarily academic. And I struggled with academia. And in those days, people either you passed or you failed, and people didn't know things like, oh, you have dyslexia or you have learning difficulties or anything. You failed, you came at the bottom of the class, and in those days also, you had your reports. I don't know what the system is like in Brazil, but you had the first position, the second position, the third position. And if you came last, you came last, so it was very much there. So it built a lot of a competitive spirit. But for me, because I wasn't necessarily academic, that held me back quite a bit. And I remember in my young days, I wanted to just dance, and that's all I wanted to do. And Irineu has alluded to the fact that even in my doing my doctorate, I took dance into the doctorates, into the research with my cohort and everything. But also in my professional career, I've also taken dance to the boardroom, and I'll come on to that as well. So anyway, I struggled with learning, especially the sciences. But the interesting thing, as Irineu has highlighted as well in my biography, was that I had an innate longing for the sciences. I mean, technology. These were things that were built in, and I always loved technology. I could never write a line of code, but I could, if you had a problem, I could compute it very quickly. Anyway, when I was in secondary school, we started doing the sciences and the arts. And then I moved. So eventually, when I dropped the science subjects and moved into the arts, I started to excel because I realized that I then understood how I learned. And it was something that once I understood how I learned, I became almost untouchable. So I moved from the bottom of the class to then excelling at the top of the class because these were all science, arts-related subjects. Anyway, I did my secondary education in Nigeria. I did my first degree in Nigeria. And then I moved to the UK, the land of my birth, to then do my postgraduate, okay? And I did my postgraduate in University of London as well. And then I started working. Now I started working and, it was a natural leaning for me to go into an area that was technology fueled. And I started working for technology first, the dot-coms. So this was the infancy of the internet. I started working in the dot-com industry and started doing a lot of my professional development at Cranfield. And then as I rose through the career ladder, I started doing more and more. I started doing more in management. I never was on the technical side, but I managed technical teams. Now, if you think about that, at that point in time, there were very, very few Black women. I was amongst a sea in technology of white men. But because I had grown up and my conditioning was such that I felt just as able as the next person, that didn't faze me. And I continued, and I was very fortunate to have some bosses and people who saw past me being a woman and a woman of color to seeing the value and the talent that I brought to the team. Also, I started team leading, I started managing, and then my career ascended until at the time I didn't realize it, but I was the first Black woman to serve on a board of a technology company. But the thing about it, I would say to everyone, was that in all of that, I had to work twice as hard. And in order to get to that executive position, I had to do an executive doctorate. You see, and become one of the most qualified people to sit on a board, to sit shoulder to shoulder with my peers. So I had to have had, a doctorate, a this, a that, all the different things tech boxed before I could ascend that level. When I then got to the boardroom, and I was the youngest member across the board, and the only, of course, person of color or person of minority, because at that time, and I think that was in 2013, it was a white male-dominated board. So the same things happened again. Oh, how do you pronounce your name? People they don't know how to address you or to raise certain issues because they don't want to cause offense. And, and for me, this is why, Fowler was talking about just now, he said he watched an interview I did on Bloomberg, and that interview was, you have to be comfortable with having those uncomfortable discussions, because for me, that is my lived experience. You bring them up, you have those uncomfortable discussions, and you'll be surprised that I was feeling uncomfortable, but everybody else was also feeling uncomfortable. So the moment you begin to have those conversations, then people see past your color, they see past your gender, and they begin to see the value you add or you bring to that discussion. Now, I went and I sat on that board because I was hired, not because then it wasn't very big about diversity and inclusion. I was hired because I was the best candidate. I had gone and done my research, and Cranfield is very known for practice-led. So it's very, very much experiential, okay? I had gone and done a comparative analysis across 4 other IT industries, 4 other major IT companies. I had come out with the findings, Somebody who used to work with me before had read the abstract of my dissertation and took it to that company, and the company said, this is exactly what we need. This is the business problem we're trying to solve. So they liked the fact that I had brought the academic rigor, but my study was done on in a research environment. My case studies and everything were done in a research environment that was living, that was live, and was solving to the current day's business issues, which were all around digital transformation, people engagement, and then the green shoots of diversity and inclusion. So anyway, I went into that organization, and the organization said to me, the CEO said to me at the time, these findings, we want you to come and operationalize them in our organization across the globe. That was a wonderful opportunity for me. I couldn't have wished for them to be paying me as an executive director to sit across 6 corporate functions. So 6 corporate directors reported into myself. I reported into the group CEO, and to then implement my findings across the organization. That was 2013. By the time I left that organization in 2017, it's in the public domain, you can go and check it out. They had made sizable step changes in their operational efficiency. So I knew that it worked. And by the time the external auditors came back in 2017 to do the audit, they said, what are you guys doing? You are now informing industry. And then I knew that my time had come, whereby I had served on the board, I had enjoyed the board, I had proved that it wasn't just a theoretical model or anything, but this is the academic rigor helped me in terms of my critical thinking and my analytical skills. And then it was time for me to now go out into industry, okay, as a practitioner. 2017, I was scared. That was the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. To leave a well-paying job to then start up my own consulting. People thought I was mad. They said, what are you doing? Listen, you have a comfortable job here. You're flying to Asia. You're in Singapore. You're in France. You're all over Europe. You're doing in Scandinavia, in Norway. I mean, I was traveling. I had a wonderful time. I had teams all over. And I said, you know what? I need to take this thing that I've studied, I've researched, I've operationalized. It has been successful. I need to take it out to industry. And you know what? That was one of the best decisions I have made. And I took that out to industry. And you know what? In the last 3 to 4 years, I could never have expected what has happened. All the stuff that Irineu has read out has come as a result of then doing all of that, and then to be awarded and recognized by the Queen of England for my services to business, and then to several boardrooms, and then even during COVID, and even now giving me the platform to now come and speak to you guys in humility, to tell you guys this story, to understand the value of what academics can do and how academics, when mixed with business, can produce just a phenomenal result, regardless of whether you're a woman, you're a man, you're white, you're black, you're gay, you're straight. Regardless of all these things, true talent shines. Now it is my duty, because I got the award, the OBE, for my services to business. And what that means is that you are called to serve. And it is part of my duty to take that message out as far as I can. So when Irineu said to me, I run a consultancy now, okay? And the consultancy is still growing. When Irineu approached me and said, listen, this is an opportunity I would like to give you, I thought to myself, and we had initial conversations, and I wrestled with myself, but you know what? When I woke up every morning, they say to you, trust your instincts. Your instincts tell you what to do. It was a no-brainer. I wrote back to him. I'd even forgotten that he was waiting on me, and I wrote back and said, oh, I'm so sorry. Of course I'll do it. And I've been looking forward to today more than anything. I've spoken at a conference yesterday, and today I'm so delighted to come and speak with you guys again. And it's an amazing opportunity. I hope I haven't spoken for too long, Irineu.
No, it was great, really great, Nneka, and also although I had the opportunity to know you in person and share several moments with you during the doctorate, you mentioned a lot of things that I didn't know about your your origin, and so forth. And I think your speech was very inspiring, because we are a higher education institution, so education is our life and is our passion. And by the way, Insper is one of the one of the unique institutions that are integrated. We don't have different schools, and we have degrees on engineering, business, economics, and also law. We are welcoming our first cohort of law students. And this integration is also very represented in your career, when you talked about bringing together your science background, technology, and also arts, and how that helped you through your career. So that was great to get to know you better, and also for our audience. And I would like to start our conversation around the ESG agenda. I know that you have been working a lot with this in corporations, and we would like to know how do you see the ESG agenda evolving nowadays in the UK, and also in other countries where you have visited and acted?
Okay, Irineu, ESG, for those who don't know what ESG is, it's environmental, social, and governance, okay? And I think the birthplace of ESG was Davos. And this is where, I think this is the Davos conference that is held with the World Economic Forum, the WEF, exactly. And pretty much sets the agenda for the corporate world, corporate social responsibility, and just really humankind as a whole, okay? Now, I approach ESG from, because I serve on boards as well. And then one thing I missed out is I serve at the Cambridge University on their board, as well as other corporate boards, okay? And there's a big agenda on climate. Everybody would know that there's an agenda on climate. There's an agenda, there's a social agenda, which has in recent months and stuff has become a bit more popular. And there's also governance. And governance, really the birth of governance came from the fall of Enron. And probably this was in 2001, really, that was when, governance and corporate governance became a big ticket item, okay? Now it is front and center of our business. It's even not just our business, it's how we do things and just generally, okay? And in terms of the environmental, for the E and climate, it's about, especially for big businesses are sometimes known to be the world's biggest pollutants. And it's a way of holding them to account, okay? And it's a way of ensuring that even for and when you look at it, it's moving from their shareholder group more to their stakeholder groups, because most businesses operated in the interest of their shareholders to give their shareholders business value, okay? Now, value is being determined right down the value chain in terms of everybody, your stakeholder. Make the world a much better place for our generation, the next generation, and generations to come. So now for these big businesses to get investments, they have to show and to report on these measures that they put in place to measure them. That is around the environment and climate, in terms of even our carbon footprint, recycling, those sort of things. Even for IT, there was a big thing about green IT, how you use green IT and how you use it much more conscionably, okay? I'll go more now to the S, and that is around the social engagement. Last year, 2020 brought that to the fore in terms of the rise of social consciousness. We had the pandemic. Organizations were now measured on how well they looked after their employees, their customer bases, higher institutions are now being measured against how well they look after their student base, their student population, and corporates also, with the rise of, this happened, as you know, last year, with the unfortunate death of George Floyd as well, now brought to the fore the inequalities in society. I mean, the pandemic did that as well. In the UK, you asked me about the UK, it shone a light on the inequality in terms of people who you call the essential workers. The essential workers were those and they found that there was the higher mortality rate for those people you call frontline workers. So not necessarily the people who were earning the most money, but those who were providing that service that kept the economy ticking over. And those were the people who were not being looked after. So there became a growing social consciousness, okay? Black Lives Matter happened, and I say I'm a strong believer in the fact that all lives matter. But the mere fact that they had to come up with Black Lives Matter was because of the social inequality that people have suffered. So this was shining a light on it and saying, listen, we need to begin to level that playing field. All lives matter. So if you can treat John Block a particular way, you can treat Nneka Abulokwe the same way. It is a basic human right. Now that transcended to corporate lives as well. So how do corporates treat their organizations? Now, off the back of that, a lot of corporate organizations came out with these big, bold statements. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to donate money. We're going to do all of that. And people are beginning to hold them to account. We'll come back. I'm sure we're going to visit that with Fowler later. So I'll leave that for now. And I'll go on to the G in terms of governance. Now, I've talked about governance a lot because governance is here to stay. And governance is about how it's almost the rule of law. You see, I'll go back to my doctoral times when I worked alongside Irineu. I say to people, I entered my with Cranfield to do my doctorate or my PhD DBA as a social or a management scientist, having looked at a problem that was to do with projects. When I did all my research and everything, I emerged a social scientist, having made my contribution to the body of knowledge of governance and governance in tech. I didn't know that was the research problem. Well, that's the beauty of research. When you follow your data and you're led by your data, it takes you places that you may not expect. Now I came out even a stronger advocate for governance and for good governance. And what I did in my doctorate was I created a new form of governance called people-centric governance. This was in 2013 when I graduated. Today, people-centric governance is what everybody is talking about, because governance is not just about compliance and regulation, it is about human oversight. And people are now beginning to hold organizations and boards to account. You have to treat and empower your human capital, and you have a higher likelihood of achieving success. That is the same success and the same research philosophy that I took into the organization when I ascended the board, and the CEO, who had the foresight at the time, said to me, operationalize this. What we went in and did was we lightened controls and gave human oversight to people, such that when our external auditors came in, they saw consistency of behaviors across the organization. And that showed that people understood, loved their jobs, and were engaged in the organization. Today, that same thinking is what we do at the board level. And boards are now beginning to be held accountable to understand that it's not just about shareholder value, it is about how you engender diversity, inclusion, corporate governance, operational governance, human oversight, how you enable your human capital. Because those are the people who, you treat them well, your profits rise. That is your greatest asset within an organization. So I hope I have actually touched on each and every one of the facets of ESG and related it to today's world and where we see ourselves today. I'm sitting here today talking about diversity and inclusion, but it's a much broader issue that touches myself, touches you, touches everybody. Irineu.
Thank you very much, Nneka. And Guilherme, I know that those topics are also dear to you and related to your research agenda. So I'd like you to pass the word to you to add some other questions to Nneka.
Okay, thank you. So Nneka, you have spent a reasonable part of your professional life in the tech industry, where we know that there is a huge gender gap in most countries. But we also know that the Black population is still very underrepresented in the big tech companies. So how bad is the picture when it comes to representation in the boardrooms and in the C-levels?
Well, you know what? I spoke on BBC about a year ago. As a matter of fact, almost a year to date, almost today, it's on my LinkedIn profile, okay? And I talked about, because they had just released what we call the Parker Review. The Parker Review gave a deadline of having at least one ethnic minority representation on the boards of the, I think it was a FTSE 100 and then the FTSE 250, okay? Because the statistics were startling for a country like the UK. And also it's not dissimilar, and I also spoke about that on Bloomberg as well. It's not dissimilar to America. So what you find is that we do not have a pipeline or a throughput of talent. You see, in 2013, when I sat on that board, I was a lone ranger. It was a lonely existence. And people say to me, you know, they say, so how do we change that? And I say, you can't be what you cannot see. You know, we have to develop that talent pool. We have young ethnic minorities, so not just even Black people, of different minorities. If you don't see, and you don't see that role model that you can aspire to be, how can you be it? You see? So what happens now is that, and this is why it is incumbent on people like myself to take this message far and wide. It was almost my corporate social responsibility or my duty to do that. What do? It's not also enough to then say, okay, we're going to start recruiting and start to recruit, you know, get enough Black faces and brown faces and things like that in the corporate environment. What happens? I know how I suffered in corporate environment being the only Black person, because you are different and you are treated differently. You know, in today's world, maybe it's a little more easier because you have role models now like myself and others who are now talking about it. So people are a lot more conscious of it, okay? But you have to be able, you have to recruit, but also you have to develop your talent. You also have to create an environment in which people can succeed, you know, and then breathe that talent pool right up all the way. Another thing about it is that I think there's a saying, I think you're going to correct me here, is it what matters gets measured, okay? Exactly. You know, so if we do not measure, and a lot of corporates are very, very scared to measure these things because it's going to find them wanting, it's going to find them deficient. Begin to measure this. Begin to understand how many people you're promoting, how many people you're mentoring. Give them reverse mentors. I'm a mentor for a rich group of people. I have a whole load of mentees. Some are white males, some are Black females, some are Asians. One of my mentees is in Jerusalem. You know, they come from all over because I run part of the Sherry Blair mentor program. And, you know, so you have to give them mentoring, but the most important thing about it is to create an inclusive corporate environment in which people can succeed. Another thing is, you mentioned tech. Now, tech is very, very male dominated because it's probably more akin to men. Men are more technical, but that's a misnomer. People think that technology is all about being technical. I wasn't technical at all. As a matter of fact, I was never good at maths. I've never written a line of code in my life, but I went into technology and I was on the management side of things. As Irineu said in my biography, I'm a fellow of the Association of Project Management because I managed tech projects. The good thing about it is that I had an underpinning and a very, very deep appreciation for technology. You know, today, I also am a cyber security expert, and I can go into any organization and have board oversight and completely review the cyber hygiene within that organization, but looking at it through a people-centric lens. Because as far as cyber is concerned, and cyber security and cyber breaches, it's more often human behavior that leads to that breach. You don't have to be technical to understand that. But you have to have that mindset in order to understand and to put in place those mitigating factors to stop those breaches happening and to review the management practices, because it's also part of the board accountability.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying, because today there is this idea that everybody should know how to code, that technical knowledge is the ultimate knowledge that a person should have. And you're saying that, well, wait a minute, there is this more, let's say, soft side, this human-centered perspective that should be not really part, it's engendered, it's part of the process per se. So can you just give one interesting example from your career that you have seen that your ability to manage, to see through the data was very pivotal in that situation?
Well, in the corporate, I'll give you an example, and I'll give you from an exec perspective. When I went into, the company was called Sopra Steria, okay? We had, the one thing that people said was that the company was data rich, information poor, okay? So they collated, there were so many data points across the organization, okay? Now, the organization delivered IT services to public and private sector organizations across the world. Some of the leading edge technology projects, whether it was for Airbus, whether it was for NATO, whether it was for the Ministry of Defense in the UK for the justice systems, okay? Hear me out here. We delivered some of the leading and bleeding edge, and we had even design labs, innovation labs. Now, can I tell you that across a multidisciplinary team that was delivering these projects, you had people who were looking at UX, customer experience. That is somebody who can go in there and visualize, put those creative juices to play, to design that system. We had systems analysts who would actually understand the functionality of that system and design that system. That didn't need coding, okay? You had business analysts who would go to the customers and understand what that business problem was. This is all technology. Okay, because technology in itself is only, it is there, it's just a bridge to satisfy a business problem or an issue. You see, so it is just, and technology in itself doesn't do it, it is there to resolve issues. So when people talk about technology, I say to people, don't be afraid, and especially in today's world, whereby we have things like even to put an application together now for the phones or the iPhone, I have an iPhone here, you don't need to be a technical person. You need to have that technical understanding where in the digital age, we have come leaps and bounds. Now, COVID as well has accelerated that transformation. It is almost a revolution whereby technology, I tell you, Cambridge University, were 95% co-located, okay? They had everybody on campus, things were happening, the pandemic hit, and they went to 95% distributed. We now had to switch on the tap, broaden our broadband. All those things had to happen within a space of 2 weeks to keep business functioning. Cambridge is one of many institutions, okay? Now, it did not take an army of technical staff. It took an army of people who could think innovatively outside the box and bring that to life and keep the business functioning, okay? So, and they moved to a virtual, and I bet the same thing with Insper as well. You've moved to a virtual and you are functioning again. So when people say that technology is not the preserve of just the scientists behind in the room who are coding, it is the preserve of those who can think creatively, who can think innovatively, and who can challenge that status quo. And that is for men, women, white, Black, everybody. I hope I've answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about that 2 crazy weeks that you have seen in Cambridge. I have to assure you that I've lived at Insper, so I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Indeed. I'll give you another example. This is for this happened in Antwerp, and this was somebody who did his doctorate as well with Irineu. I think he was a cohort below us. And he said to me, you know, he works on crisis management, okay? We formed a think tank after I finished my doctorate. And he said to me, he says, Nneka, this hospital he works for crisis management had a business continuity plan for a pandemic. Yeah? So when the pandemic struck, they brought out their business continuity plan and started rattling off. And guess what? Within 45 minutes, they had to throw it away because it was not relevant. So you can almost not plan for that, but it takes ingenuity, because they said they had to work with the police, the fire brigade, this, that, the other, and think on their feet. So this pandemic hit everybody sideways, and is what we term as a wicked problem. You know, I'm sure you've heard that in academia as well, a wicked problem. Yes, a wicked worldwide problem. Yeah.
And I must say that we obviously experienced this change. We changed the whole operation of Insper in a week, and unlikely other institutions that were much more advanced in using technology in education and providing distance learning programs and so forth, Insper had this tradition of relying almost 100% on face-to-face education.
Yeah.
And in 1 week, we switched everything. And it was funny because when the pandemic struck in Europe, and we got news that Bocconi in Milan, in Italy, was stopping everything for 1 week, then returning on a remote mode, we thought, well, we could never do that. So, I mean, we must try to prepare, because if this pandemic reaches São Paulo and Brazil, we'll be in a very bad situation. And despite of that, we were able to make this transition. And looking backward, it was really not about technology. It was really about people. And
the mind.
In my view, we were able to do so because of years and years of work with people, creating a kind of a culture in our faculty that we have an outstanding group of faculty that have passion for education. And now I know that, I mean, if a volcano explodes or any other disaster, they will be able to manage and continue the operation, because they can do everything. Because and that was a result of years and years of work with people. So they not only have this passion to keep the business and our mission continues to work, but also they have the ingenuity to find ways to do so. So I completely agree with you. It's more about people and the way that you make people work together.
Indeed.
From different disciplines, and by this interplay in different knowledge areas, you can find the best solutions. And that's great, because that's at the heart of what Insper is.
No, and as I said to you, technology is just the enabler. You see, so it's there to enable these things. But if you don't have the people, so when people say, oh, technology is just a field for, you have to be technical, you have to be, I'm saying you're missing the beauty of what technology can do, and how we should, and what place technology takes in our lives. It's, yeah. So yes, very, very, very true, Irineu.
Nneka, let me drive the conversation, and I'm also building on some of the questions that we have been receiving on the chat from the audience.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk to hear you talk about how corporations are dealing with the agenda of diversity and inclusion, And I'd like to mention some of the ways that we are seeing this happen in Brazil.
Please.
We recently had some movements from some corporations, a big retail company, starting a trainee movement, and that is it's devoted to hire people from minority, most of them from Black and brown people. And this was a very interesting situation because the company got a lot of good feedback because of this movement, but also there are several people that think that this was kind of a racist action because you were leaving out Black people, white people, just because they were white. So there was one movement of these affirmative actions that you establish quotas for minorities and so forth. And particularly at Insper and some other institutions, we somehow see these affirmative actions as shortcuts that may not provide good results in the long term. So what we are trying to do in several areas is we have a scholarship fund to attract students from underprivileged families to study at Insper, paying no tuition and receiving also some kind of help for living and food and so forth. But we have this difficulty in showing some communities that Insper is a place for them, for these underprivileged kids. So we are trying to start a program of preparing high school students to be better prepared for our admission program, and this may take 3 years, so we can work with these kids from slums in Rio and in São Paulo, and not only better prepare them academically, but also try to develop a kind of a vision for the future, and that they can succeed and change the life of their families through education. And also on the faculty side, we have been very successful recently in attracting, recruiting, and selecting based on their skills and competence, not based on their color. We have been successful in attracting and hiring some Black and brown faculty to bring more diversity to our faculty body. But also we are trying to attract young researchers so we can prepare them in-house, so they will in the future have a better fit with our faculty. So in a sense, we don't believe in quotas and open some seats for people just because they are Black or they are gay or they are trans or whatever. So I'd like to hear from you. How do you see these movements, and how do you see corporations choosing different ways to enhance diversity and inclusion?
You see, Irineu, it's very, very it's very different, and it's also very culturally laced and based. Okay, because as you were speaking, I was actually even looking back in Nigeria, as I grew up in Nigeria as an example. Okay. And I'll come back to the corporate world in the UK, and I'll probably touch on Brazil as well. But in Nigeria, when I grew up, I went to a secondary school, and the secondary school was one of the best, okay, in the country. And they had them in different states of the country, and they were called the federal schools, funded by the federal government. They had teachers coming from all over the world. It was really top class education. Now, education was free and education for all. They had that slogan. But guess what? They had to have it on merit and also quota systems in order to have a fair representation in that leading class of people who these are your future leaders, okay? Now, you see, you articulated a problem there in terms of people saying that, okay, quotas, and somebody is left behind, other people are not left, okay. But you see, what you're doing, and that in itself plays to a very, very short-term mentality. What you're looking to do, you're playing that longer game because you are building a sustainable future, okay? So you may start things now, but when they begin to develop shoots later down, you begin to see the value and the benefits of it all, okay? I don't think quotas are bad, because I talked about quotas in terms of even the boards. They say you had to have one person from an ethnic or black or brown skin by 2021, okay? Many people may not agree with that. I am a lived example of boards recruiting me because I am at the intersection between a female and a black woman. So they hit two already. And okay, it just so happens that yes, I may be bright. But the thing about it, Irineu, and I see you laughing there, is that the thing that walks before me is my intellect. It just so happens that I'm a black woman. Okay? People ask me, I was on a webinar and somebody asked me, say, how do you feel about tokenism? And I said, unless you walk in my shoes today, you cannot then talk about tokenism, because I am that leading role model who is inspiring the next generation and showing them that it is possible. The problem you articulated, let me reverse that mentality for you now, okay? You're talking about the fact that it's almost a positive or affirmative action to exclude others. I'm going to preface what I'm going to say now by saying that I believe in leveling the playing field. I believe in an organization or a society that excludes any member of the society is doing itself a disservice. But the one thing I'm going to say to you now is that if you're doing that to then level that playing field, then you can imagine what brown and black people have suffered for many years. So why is it okay for that population or that segment of the population to have suffered that, and you're now looking to address that? I think that is unconscionable thinking, because others have been left behind. So why can't you move them forward? I think also that there's a fear of the unknown. And sometimes, we fear what we don't know. We fear what we don't see. Because we fear what is not in our own likeness. Okay? Irineu, we studied our doctorate together. Okay? There were 3 women and there were 12 of us in the cohort. 3 women, 9 men, okay? After the first session or whatever, we got past all of that, and we became a team that was supportive and looked after one another. I'm talking to you today. As soon as they said to you, okay, we need this person, I immediately came to mind. We formed friendships and bonds, regardless of our gender or our race. What transcended was the intellect and the respect you then had for the next human being, okay? So let's take that up to that higher level of engagement. Organizations are afraid because they have to build that environment for staff engagement. It is futile if you recruit people, get more faces that they give you a diverse mix and you don't know what to do with them. If you begin to measure the retention rates, you will see that they will go down eventually.
Nneka, may I just interrupt you, because you're talking about some very important aspect, and there is a person from the audience that has made a very interesting question related to that.
Yep.
His name is Gustavo, has asked, in your opinion, what is my duty as a white man in the fight to reduce all inequalities?
Oh, wonderful question. And I say, I like Gustavo already, okay? Because now you've asked the question, and this is a question that many people are so afraid to ask. Just that simple question opens up, because then I begin to talk about what it feels like as a Black woman or a woman, and then we begin to have that conversation. Gustavo has already broken down that barrier that many people are so afraid to ask. You see, and the thing about it for me is, I tell you honestly, and when I sit down amongst other women, and these are women from all races or other people from my race, the thing about it is that there's also some inertia, there's also some fear to even talk about it. So sometimes when you ask that question, you're giving me permission to speak and permission to be. You get it here. So, and then it's just being about more accepting of the next person. We are all, there's more that binds us than divides us. Color and race is only skin deep. It doesn't touch the soul of one. There's so much more common ground between us as human beings. And this is why I say all lives matter. In a society, the moment you exclude, or you begin to consciously exclude people from the society, you're doing that society an ill, because everybody has a right and a relevance in society. Thank you for that question, Gustavo.
And in relation to that, there is another question from the audience, from Diego. Mm-hmm. He asks, how do you believe we can better develop ourselves but still act towards inclusion and better life conditions in our own place of birth? How do you manage to give back to Nigeria, for example?
Okay, that's relating to me. Okay, you see, okay, I'll be transparent with you guys here. I came to the UK just after my first degree. I think I was 20 or 21. And I've been in the UK ever since. I've given my best lives, my best years to the UK, or I still have many years ahead of me. But what I do is I acknowledge the fact that my formative years, the building blocks of my formative years were in Nigeria, and it's as a result of me growing up in Nigeria, do I stand strong today in a very good stead. I go back to Nigeria. I speak at conferences in Nigeria. I sponsor kids in Nigeria. In terms of even the STEM agenda, this is the science, technology, engineering, and maths. Okay. If you go on my, this is a plug here, but if you go, I think it's on my Instagram or Facebook, or I think it's even on my LinkedIn, actually, where I went to a school in Ghana, and it was an African Science Academy, and spoke up to them. I'm a role model for so many of them. You mentor them, because it is important. It is very, very, very important to do that as a woman and not forgetting the origins. What was the first part of his question again? That was the second part of the question. There was the first part. You're on mute, sorry. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for that. How do you believe we can better develop ourselves, but still act towards inclusion?
And I think that is a very, very, very intelligent question. And just by even the mere fact, I'm loving these questions, just by even the mere fact that you're thinking of self as well as other is a starting point. Because you see, and as a diversity consultant, or when I go into organizations, what often happens is people are thinking of themselves. But now what you're seeing is that people are thinking of self and other. And that in itself, you're beginning to look sideways at the next person. So you're already aware of the fact that people may not necessarily feel either as empowered as you, or you may need to give them permission to speak. That is a very, very good starting point. And I must say a conscionable starting point, which if we all thought like that, we wouldn't have this issue. True, we wouldn't have this issue. So even just having that thought process alone, and what happens, it starts from one person, and you touch the life of one person to this side, one person to that side. I talked about the cohort of 12. My cohort of 12 looked nothing like me. I don't even need to say it. I was only a Black woman, but I felt I could reach out to different people at different times when I had problems, even in the business world, because there were people who thought about themselves, but also about self and other. It's a very, very important ingredient, not in the diversity discussion, but in the inclusion discussion, and becoming a much more inclusive society.
And I'm going to take a question from a girl now, because you have to have it's two male-dominated questions. So Nayeni asks, Nneka, what do you think that a Black woman should actually do to achieve the power? She says the power.
You see, it's power and influence are things that are very interesting, you see. And you see, I'll say something. Power is, as a result, is a byproduct of many things, okay? I would say to you first, and I would say to my younger self first, and it has worked for me in my career, is to earn respect first. Then power comes. And I'll give you an example. I was put in a position of power when I was at the board level. The executive committee of that organization had 13 people or something, the board executive committee, of which I was one of them, okay? So you immediately think that that is a position of power. And it seems so, yes. You know, you're at the top of an organization that has 45, 50, 60,000 people worldwide, okay? But you cannot, you see, when things started to change for me, and when I indeed began to feel I had power and influence, was when I was being respected as a seasoned professional. That comes, and you have to earn that respect. Respect is predicated on so many other things. How you treat people, how you keep your word, your integrity. Do you show up? Do you promise? And do you deliver? You see, people want, you see, and people, you see, power is something that people want so quickly, but they forget that there's a recipe for getting power and how you use power. Power used badly can be a very destructive thing. So it just depends on your definition and your need for power. So for me, going into that position, you know, we would give strategy road shows, which would be filmed. So all the board members would say, and then they would broadcast it across all the different regions, you know, and everything. And my CEO would give me some of the key messages, because I was different and I looked different, and people would sit up and say, oh, what does this woman have to say? That was a position of power, but I earned his trust in order to be able to deliver that message with integrity and with poise, and with what you call equanimity as well, you know, with humility. So people, you see, how you use power is, and I sometimes, it's one of those things that you have to be careful about how and what you want power for and how you use it. I hope I've answered that question.
What I'm most like about your answer is that you're saying you first need to earn power within you, and then you can go and devote. But and there is, you see,
trust, exactly, trust. People have to trust you to then, you know, and then you can then wield that power in a conscionable way, because you're in a position of leadership. And sometimes you don't always have to lead from the front. You can lead from the side, or you can lead from behind as well. You know, and that is still power. You know, your teams, you push your teams forward, you do things, but you don't always have to be the one in front. That is leadership. Yeah.
There is a very interesting question from Luciano from the audience.
Yep.
And he says, Dear Nneka, how can we bring the big picture, the historical perspective and context to the current discussions and decisions about racism? I have Nigerian roots as well, and I am an Insper alumnus. His name is Luciano.
Okay.
So he's asking, how can we bring this big picture, this historical perspective, to analyze racism today and to think about decisions that have to be made regarding it?
I don't know if I quite understand the question. The bigger picture in terms of what?
I think he's mentioned this kind of slave history, all this historical perspective on how should this help shape the policies and decisions nowadays? This is how I understand his question.
I will try and answer that question, okay? But you see, we don't live in a vacuum. History has a role to play in whatever we do today, okay? He's saying he's of Nigerian origin, okay, and he's in Brazil. So there must be some sort of historical heritage to him being in Brazil, okay? Now, you see, even from the days of the slave trade, and I'm going to go back to that, okay, because that is also part of my history. My mother is in Jamaica because of the slave trade, and then she's and all of that. So, but you see, and it has an impact on how things have happened to today. In today's world, okay? I'm going to answer that from my own lived experience. And when I see people like in what we call the new world today. So the mere fact that a country like Brazil has this rich mix of different cultures is because of the historical heritage, be it whether it's the slaves, whether it's, people have come from Europe, so it's a melting pot. In all of that, of course, there was a pecking order, okay? And in a lot of countries in the Caribbean, the lighter your skin, the higher up the value chain or whatever you were, okay? In today's world, we are now getting to a point whereby we are trying to level that playing field. In some countries like the UK and a lot of the advanced countries have used measures in place to then say, okay, we're going to, and there are laws and things like that. You go to the Middle East, it's very different, It is a completely different world. I'm sure in South America too, it's a completely different world. So it's very, very situational. But I can speak from the UK as an example. Now in the UK, unfortunately, we have to have quotas. We have to have government directives. We have to name and shame organizations in order for them to recognize the fact that we all have a value to add and a place at that table. But this is something that we are beginning to move that agenda. And it is my hope that our children and by our children's generation, we would have a much more equitable society. Not equal, but equitable society. Where people are treated fairly and all of that. I hope I didn't quite understand, but I hope I've answered that question.
I think so, and I will keep on this subject.
Yes,
and this is my question, okay? So how do you see the developments of the Black Lives Matter movement in the corporate world? Do you think that effective changes are being produced?
That's a hard one, you see, and it's still, we'll wait and see. It has been, you see, the Black Lives Matter movement, I think, started quite a few years ago, okay? It came to the fore with COVID and also the unfortunate demise of George Floyd, okay? It was something that organizations began to realize that was an issue, but it took the unfortunate loss and such a public loss of life in such a brutal way for this consciousness to start, or in people's psyche, okay? So across a lot of corporate organizations, there's a massive growing social consciousness. They came out with big and bold statements about what they were going to do. And I'm finding that these were on paper good. They made them look good, but they were received with a lot of healthy skepticism because most of what they were talking about was not necessarily sustainable. What organizations are finding, and me as a consultant going into organizations are now beginning to put their hand up and say, listen, we don't know how to manage this. Come and help us. The first thing to do is first to admit it, and then to begin to have these conversations, because who is best placed to help you than those who have suffered it? I'm a massive proponent for building an inclusive. So it's not about, you see, the problem is not about diversity. The problem is the lack of diversity. It's not diversity, it's not the problem. So the lack of diversity, you build an inclusive working environment where Irineu, where you, where we all feel comfortable. It's not about, oh yes, let's section this population of this section of the population and treat them differently. No, you put in a system, whether it is pay and rewards, whether it is having people making sure there's career advancement, making sure that your working population base resembles society. You begin to do that. You begin to engage people as well, because everybody matters. But is making sure that people like myself and others, the Black and brown people, can feel comfortable, can show up and feel comfortable with it and not be judged. That is a harder sell. And this is where a lot of organizations struggle. Now, the second part of your question is, I hope it is done in a sustainable way. I hope it is done in a meaningful way. And I hope that really organizations do really want to shift that dial, because there's so many talented people out there and you're doing your organization a disservice amongst the population that may not look like you. There's so much talent. I see it. So you're doing your organization a disservice by not tapping into that talent pool. Retain, train, promote, have people like me who other people can inspire to be like, and who can inspire others.
Nneka, Diego says,
yes?
Diego,
yes.
Such thoughtful answers and inspiring lessons you are giving us today, and thank you very much. So she's just saying, and there is another question that is more personal.
Yes.
So Alexia, she asks you, Nneka, how did you feel when you were honored by Queen Elizabeth?
What Diego just said made me a little emotional, actually, because it's thank you, and thank you to everybody listening. Now, I say to people, how did I feel when I got honored by the Queen? It was a Queen's birthday in 2019, and for some reason, and this is it, I will tell you exactly how it happened for me. You get a letter before that notifies you, and then so before it's announced. My letter went to my old address, so I had no idea, no clue. And I remember that day, it was a Saturday morning. I woke up on a Saturday morning, the household and everything. I was speaking to my mother in Nigeria, and I just said to her, I said, Mom, my phone has been going and I don't understand. And then I was getting these messages. And on the Thursday before, I had been in the top 100 list of role models, of ethnic minority role models in the Financial Times. Okay. I think I was ranked maybe number 4, something like that in the Financial Times. So I'm thinking, these guys have seen this late. This happened 2 days ago, and you know how media is and all of that. And then I went on to Google and I Googled my name. And I saw in the London Gazette, Dr. Nneka Abulokwe has been awarded. I think it was the Voice newspaper, and then it started coming up. I called my mother back and I said, Mommy, I've only been awarded an OBE. I had to go and find out what exactly, of course, what these things, but I had to go and find out what exactly it meant. And, and it was the most humbling, because it was to services for business. So on the Monday, I called another friend of mine who had an OBE, and I said, listen, Bola, what is this about? He says, oh, anyway, he gave me the number for the cabinet office. On the Monday, I called the cabinet office, and I called them and I said to them, I said, I've been awarded this OBE and everything. I said, tell me a bit more about it. Anyway, it so transpires that, due to the Secrecy Act, they can't tell you who nominated you. Because what happens is that you get nominated, but they go and they do their due diligence, and people have to give honest feedback that you will never. So people have to be honest in their feedback, because this is one of the highest honors in the land. So people have to be honest. And then when they've done all and if you pass, so maybe 5,000 may be nominated, and only 100 may get it, that few. So when I then realized, it was one of the most humbling experiences, because it must have come from my peers. It must have come from, people around me and stuff, And on the day, I had my family attend with me, okay? And to go to the palace and to get this honors and to have it pinned to me, and then now that you are called to serve. is a wonderful thing. People ask me, has it changed me? I said it has changed my life in ways that I could never have imagined. And the one thing that it makes you feel is that you have a duty to serve and to serve others, be it in whichever way, whether it's in digital transformation, diversity and inclusion, governance, all these are my areas of expertise. But first, it's about serving and taking that message out. And which better way to do it than people-centric governance?
So we're approaching almost our time, and then I have a very special question to ask you. So, as Irineu has mentioned, we have this scholarship program at Insper dedicated to low-income students. In this cohort, we received 75 scholarship students, and probably they are watching you now. What would you say to them so they can start a career as brilliant as yours?
Well, interesting, Fowler, because I also personally run a scholarship scheme for the school I attended in Nigeria to sponsor a few students. And what I say to them is go in there and knock it out the park. You see, they may be scholarship students, but it doesn't make them any less a person. I'll use my own example. I came into the UK. I was a Black woman, but I felt no less than anybody else. The biggest thing that holds you back is your own mind and your own mindset. Because when you go in there, and I can throw this question to Irineu, when I came onto the cohort of 12, did I feel or did I act any less than anybody else? Irineu?
No, actually, I don't have any. I don't remember any thought that I had at that moment about any difference that I could see, except for the fact that you were very open to talking to people and to getting to know. So I have this feeling that you were among the group, one of the persons that would really like to engage with the others, and I think you were responsible for, in some sense, not only you, but you contributed to bring the people together as a team. And I remember the administrators and the coordinator of the from the school saying that our cohort was unique in that aspect. But by no means I myself or any of us would look at you and think you were different in any way.
Okay, so that has given you an answer. Okay, and for me, the other side of that coin is if I had gone in there and behaved like a shrinking violet, that would have inhibited me. You see, the power is with you. You see, go in there and you see, the world is your oyster. You have been placed or you have been accepted alongside everybody else. It is now incumbent upon you to go forth and knock that ball out the park. Be that unifying force. Be that force to be reckoned with. Why should you not be? I think it is. I wanted to say it's a privilege, but I even think it's even bigger than a privilege. It's a right. You've earned that right to be there. So go forth. The fact that you're on a scholarship means it doesn't make you any less a human being. It's just giving you the opportunity. If you waste that opportunity, then I would say shame on you for wasting that opportunity. It is to be grabbed with both hands. Trust me.
Wonderful, Nneka. We are approaching the time to end, but so I'd like to what I was going to ask you have already done, but I would ask you to leave a final message to our students, to the students that are just starting their journey at Insper. And among them, we have a lot of white boys, white girls, and we also have the fortune to have been able to increase the representation of minorities in our student body. They are still kind of a 10-15%, but we are moving forward in this agenda. So we are very happy to be evolving in this regard. So I would ask you to leave a message for them. They are starting a very important part of their career. They will study 4 years or 5 years, depending on the program, at Insper on a full-time basis, and they have the opportunity to devote themselves to education, to their own development, but also will have a chance to interact with people from different origins and cultures and so forth. Not only considering the Brazilians they are entering, but also people that will be able to attract from different countries, different nationalities that will come to study at Insper in our exchange program. So I would ask you to leave a final message to these students, which are the big part of our audience today, in this beginning of their journey at Insper.
Irineu, I gave this some careful thought. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know, because when I was giving you some thoughts, Fowler as well, I said to myself, what would I have told my younger self? Okay? And I've come up with 5 things, okay? And I saw somebody else who had done a similar thing, and I thought, wow, that is very powerful, okay? So I'm going to read out 5 things I would tell my younger self, okay? The first is always trust your instinct. You see, the instinct is your subconscious. Your subconscious sees things that you don't see and is there. I mean, I tell you something, there's a conscious and the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is much more powerful and it really guides you. Trust your instinct, and only you know how to get there, but trust your instinct. Another thing is fear is a useful tool if you master it. I'm not afraid of being afraid. You know, that's the thing. Fear is there. We will always be. What does fear say to us? We're going into a place of we're uncomfortable. But guess what? You grow from being uncomfortable. You just know how to master your fear. It's an important thing, because we all. I mean, I was nervous coming onto this. You know, because it's a challenge. It's a new area. You know, I know Irineu, but everybody else. You know, so. Everybody feels it. Don't feel that, oh, you're superwoman. No. You feel it, but just learn how to master it. The third thing, it's okay to fail, but learn from it as well. You will fail. You know, I've started off businesses. I've felt uncomfortable. I've done, you know, but you know something, it's just part of that life. I told you about the failures. I mean, even when I started school, I was at the bottom end of the ladder. And my mother uses that as a testimony today. When she talks about people, she says, listen, she has my report cards to show. And when I then move to the top, your time comes. Okay. So failure is not the end of the world. And then never let others tell you you're not enough. And this is to that population of new students, as well as everybody else. We all suffer from that, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's a fear, you know, your own insecurities. You know, people come to me and say, oh, do you feel nervous? And you sound so confident. And I'm thinking, I was as nervous, but I just learned how to manage my nervousness, you know? So it's you know, but never feel that you're not enough, because you are. You know, when you go in there, look left, look right, you think about yourself, think about the other, how the other person can benefit as well. It's not always about you. And the last one, which is my biggest problem, is don't overthink it. Honestly, I tell you, and let me say something about Irineu. We were on a research project together, and it was a qualitative piece. And I think there were 3 of us on this project. There was Munir, myself, and Irineu. Yep. And then we would have conference calls and everything. Irineu was always thinking, and there's another perspective, and I'm thinking, and Munir and I would look at him like this. And we said, we have to 1 more week. This man is still thinking, okay? Eventually, we had to close it down because we were in the corporate world, of course. Irineu is an academic. Academics do that as a living. They're pondering over stuff, they're deconstructing, they're synthesizing, they're analyzing. We said, listen, time is of the essence. Sometimes you cannot overthink things. Sometimes you just have to do it. But also be ready for the consequences. Because time is precious. So if those are the 5 things, so trust your instinct. Fear is useful. It's a useful tool. Look at it as a tool. Yep. Failure. Don't be afraid to fail. Get yourself up. It's how you recover from failure and how you engage with others. Keep healthy people around you and don't let other people tell you you're not enough. You are enough. And the last one, but not the least, is don't overthink it. Just do it.
Nneka, I've made good decisions and bad decisions all through my life. And one of the best ones was to invite you for this talk today, me and with Guilherme. So thank you very, very much. I thank to technology that we were able to be here and to share this event this morning. But also, I feel that I would love to have the opportunity to be face-to-face with you and give you a warm hug and remember the times that we were together at Cranfield. So thank you very much. Yeah. I think the audience loved your talk, and I think Guilherme agrees with me. And let's look for other opportunities that you can be with us at Insper. Thank you very, very much.
Totally. And can I just say one last thing to the audience?
Sure.
The questions were just amazing. I'm blown away by the questions because it just shows the level of thinking, and people are thinking in a healthy and the right direction. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. Okay. And please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and I'm all the social platforms, and I'd love to engage. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. And thank you to all that were with us this morning. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and the week hasn't ended, and we have more events for you students, and welcome to Insper. Thank you very much.
Thank you.